Chris.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. So Chris is actually, was so excited when I asked him if he'd join us here on stage, and he said yes. He is, for those of you that don't know, definitely one of Australia's most amazing product designers. I told him I would tell everyone about this, and he was like, no. But Chris, you've had two amazing startups, really, Comic Life and Skitch, which you've been the designer and brains behind. Does anyone out there know...
One of the brains.
One of the brains, always takes a team. Does anyone out there know about Skitch? I'm a big Skitch fan, love it to death. And Comic Life, which was originally loaded onto...
We sold it originally, and then it got bundled on, or Apple licensed it.
Apple license, so lot of success there. So you want to tell us a bit of the background of Comic Life and of Skitch and your role in that?
Yeah, sure. Comic Life was a great idea by one of my colleagues, and so this is 2005, and then I helped, along with Keith Lang, design the interface to make it amazing, fun to use, and within the first month that received an Apple Design Award, and I can't remember exactly how long after, about 10 months after, Apple came to us and wanted to license it, and it became bundled on Apple Macs for about 1.5 years. And through that process, I had the idea of Skitch. So I was working remotely with a lot of people. Back then, there weren't a lot of online collaborative tools, and Skitch helped speed up that process to be able to communicate visually online with people you're working with. And so yeah, Skitch became very popular in the startup scene. It was everyone used it back in the day.
How many users did it sort of have?
At its height, so I wasn't involved in it for a while through the Evernote period, but I think it got up to about 10 million users. So yeah, that's decent.
Yeah, 10 million users, that's not too shabby. So what, one of the things I wanted to touch base with you on is around your ideology around product and product design. You know, is there any kind of principles you've sort of carried through your design and of those particular products?
Definitely, a lot of iteration, and I think that's what a lot of people do. We took it to pretty extremes with Skitch, forcing the interface to be very, very rough for quite a while, so that we didn't get too bogged down in how it looked. Like if you make something look too good early on, you can get a little bit too attached to it. So we were just constantly. The other big thing was we were testing it on ourselves a lot. Skitch came about because we needed it, and then we were using it internally to build. Like Skitch was building itself. Because we used it to collaborate on building it and the other piece of software. So we were constantly looking at our uses, how we could speed up. Skitch was about helping you do your work as quickly as possible. So as we were using it, we were like, oh, how do we speed it up? So you hear this advice a lot, but it's like, if you're a user of your own product, it's going to show if you continually using it. So,
and one of the things we talked about also is that you adding the element of fun always to your products. I love that as a theory. You want to talk to us about that?
Yeah, Comic Life was a very fun app to use. It helped you make comics from your photos. So just the concept is fun, but a lot of work went into making the interface fun. So like you'd drag the speech balloons, and Keith came up with great sounds, like it made squeaky balloon sounds when you moved it, and just things moved in fun and interesting ways. And we took that over to Skitch as well. Skitch kind of swished around the screen in interesting ways, and got in and out of the way quickly. It was fun to use, even though it was collaboration. It's not the most fun concept of software, but we made it at least a little bit enjoyable.
So Skitch, you landed up selling to Evernote. Do you want to talk to us about that sort of process? I guess a lot of people out there, you know, working on startups think getting funding or selling to a big company is the end dream, and that didn't land up being
not really
this thing that we all think it is. Be great if you could be honest with us about your experience in that.
Yeah, I think I always knew I wasn't necessarily going to fit in too well. I tend to like working from home and doing my own thing a little bit too much. That's probably part of the problem why it didn't work out so well. Part of the problem was, how would I put it? I definitely wasn't happy through that process. So I've struggled with depression, anxiety a lot. That certainly had a big impact on how I was able to function, and it comes up a lot. A lot of people have this issue. Yeah, I'm not sure where to go from that.
So one of the things that kind of strikes me is the paradox of being a startup founder, though. You work on something because you want to be doing your own thing and changing the world and you know, all those other great ambitions. But ultimately you could land up being just a big company or selling to another company and being absorbed into that. You know, what are your thoughts on that as a thing? And do you think, you know, if you went back, would that be what you were aiming for?
Yeah, I definitely got caught up in the kind of the cult of the startup world. I was watching it a lot all the time. That was my world. I lived in it for so long, and kind of the outcomes are like sell to a large company in Silicon Valley or get investment capital and have a runaway success. But there are other ways that you can create a sustainable business as well. And I don't have exact examples of it, but you can just create a sustainable business that actually makes money. That's a good way to go about it. But a lot of people get funneled down those other roads and think that's the way to go. And I certainly got stuck in that a bit.
And I know when we've talked personally, you've talked about you know, part of that startup culture that isn't worth you know, throwing up and no one really talks about is the long and lonely hours. The fact that there is a big culture of drinking around startups, you know, that sort of thing. You know, it'd be great if we can unpack some of the glossiness of it and talk about some of those real struggles, you know, as a founder and through what you went through.
Yeah, there's a lot of long hours and well, I think there's a lot of introverts in this world, and I certainly I used alcohol to push myself through that social anxiety at times, and pushing through the long hours sometimes. That it helps, but it doesn't help in the long run. That's for sure. And I think because there are a lot of introverts in that world, they tend to use that as a tool, but there's a lot of unhealthy eating as well. Like all the pizza and beer nights, is people get kind of funneled down that road as well, and it's combine that with all of the stress. It's kind of a perfect storm to end up not being too well.
And I know you've been working on your own sort of mental health and those sorts of things since, you know, things went belly up with Evernote. I don't know if you want to, I don't know how many people know the story, if you want to talk through what happened with Evernote.
Well, we sold Skitch to Evernote, and the Skitch product is still around on the Mac. A lot of the features of Skitch got built into Evernote as a product. What in particular do you want to know about that bit? Yeah.
So I know you moved over to the Valley, didn't you? And
yeah.
You kind of were there, and
yeah. I sold. Sold it. Moved over there. Lived there for about 1.5 years. I didn't really get involved too much in Skitch once it was sold. I actually I went AWOL, and I hit a point where I'd been pushing myself for too long, and but Keith Lang, who was also one of the guys who helped build Skitch, he continued pushing Skitch along while over there. But yeah, I ended up getting fired by Evernote because I was not functioning there at all. Yeah.
So you came back.
Yep.
And you decided to have a tree change, like a serious tree change. You bought a big truck, you went to the bush. Do you want to talk to us about some of those life hacks about dealing with those sorts of issues?
Yeah, my health got to a point where, and just all these things were failing. Getting fired, and I even had to go bankrupt. Like my depression, just I was collapsed so many times, and I just got to a point where I really need to look at my health, and the anxiety, depression was just getting worse and worse. So I decided to just throw all of the kitchen sinks at my health, and just had podcasts beaming into my ear constantly of nutrition information and hacks of how to get your mood up. So meditation was a massive one for me. Getting out of the mind into the heart has been a huge change for me. Life is a lot easier when you're not living up here all the time. Intermittent fasting that helped me lose 12 kilos as well, because that was a health problem. Just really good diet, removing most processed foods, and figuring out what foods don't work for me has really helped.
Do you think those are things that people can integrate into a startup life, or are they two different things? Do you have to remove yourself to get better?
Well, I'd like to think you don't have to completely remove oneself like I had to. There are definitely tools that you can use. I wish I'd cleaned up my diet and started meditating way earlier. That would have helped me get through my earlier life a lot easier, that's for sure. Yeah.
So, I mean, for people in the audience, if you went back and said to CRIS Pearson, all those many years ago, what would be the advice you'd give yourself to maybe, have reduced some of those sorts of things?
Start meditating straight away. Like that's if I could speak to my 20-something self, it would be start meditating and really look at the food you're putting into your body, and also look at how you are as a person. And so I was pushing myself to be out there, and probably in a way that didn't really suit my who I truly am, like trying to be more outgoing and more extroverted, because that's kind of what the world seems to want. But if you don't want to hang out with lots of people all the time, don't. Like, just beaver away at home or in the office, and don't force yourself to network all the time. Networking is important, absolutely. Do it in your own way. Don't look at how other people are doing things. feel from your heart and do it in the way that makes sense to you.
And what's next for CRIS Pearson? You've had this incredible journey, incredible success that a lot of people want. You landed up, I think, learning that at the end it wasn't what you want. Was that the lesson you walked away with?
I think it was what I wanted. I think, and I'm pretty happy with what I've achieved. Like, I can come out of it now and look back and go, wow, I did some cool stuff. But I think I pushed myself too long in that way of doing things. I tried doing some design again recently, and I just realised it blocked me up and made me unhappy. So I really just need to end that part of and like figure out what the next part of my life is. So when I was a kid, I always said I wanted to be an inventor and I wanted to be a chef. So my next thing will absolutely be in food and nutrition, but also trying to help people as well. So my college design teacher, I'm going to be working with her on a retreat to help people get through this burnout. We've both been through our own journey of like a roller coaster of mental health, physical health. We've both huge learners. We test things on ourselves and meditate regularly. We've got ourselves into a better position. So we've got a lot of personal learnings that we can help teach people, give other people tools to so that they don't completely collapse like we have done. Yeah, so a lot of that will be giving people tools to heal trauma and teaching people good nutrition, getting back to nature as well. We're all very divorced from nature these days. We don't hang out in nature enough. You mentioned I kind of hit the road in my truck. I was
with a beard.
Yeah, with a beard. Yeah, I dressed up for you today. I got out of my bush clothes today, which is pretty much how I don't usually wear these so much these days. But yeah, a lot of these depression issues there's so much evidence now about gut biome and how massive impact that has. So like a lot of what I was doing was like gardening and getting dirty and like not washing the veggies that I grew myself, and like I was living by rivers and bathing in them every day, like just to get refill my body with good bacteria. So that was just one of the other many things that I threw at my mental health and physical health to get me where I am. So that will, getting back to nature will be a big part of the retreat as well.
So do you think they are two separate worlds, or do you think so much of the startup world is its own little bubble and we need to start talking more and more about these things, more about that journey? I mean, what are your views on that? I know to me it feels like a little bit at the moment you're like, I want to leave it all over there.
No, not that. I have been very much hands off, but I love the startup world as well. Like, I still follow it a lot, and I think the lessons that I've had can be brought back into that world. Absolutely, it is a very hard driving world, but you can take time out, and you need to. And I really struggled to take time out and slow down a bit. And it is really hard to do that, but you have to take breaks and completely switch off, turn your phone off and stop looking at your laptop all the time, turn all the notifications off. There's lots of little things that you can do to extract yourself from that world in regular times. Yeah, grow a garden.
Well, thanks so much for being honest with us, which I think is something we don't often hear enough about in this, in this glossy world of everyone, fulfilling their dreams, and we don't often talk about some of the grunchy stuff and the fact that actually, you know, things can get tough and people can be worn down. I don't know if we've got any questions. Sorry, I've got to keep my lapel from the audience. Yeah.
Thank you for your candidness. It is absolutely extraordinary, and I think we just should give him a round of applause now. Sometimes the startup community is a self-fulfilling prophecy in its own right, and we get caught up in the glamour, and you know, we have become the hottest industry in town. And it does damage along the way, and all of us get touched by that, and not enough people have the guts to stand up and say something. So congratulations. We do have lots of questions, and there was lots of activity on Twitter then acknowledging your bravery and your courage and your honesty.
Oh, wow.
The one question that I want to ask is about the community, because that's obviously what we here at LaunchVic are here to drive that. And is there anything that as a community we could be doing more to help people on a journey so that we don't have founders reaching burnout and getting to the point where they're feeling that they have to exit? What can the community do collectively to support?
Better food. the food system's
no more
pretty
pizza.
Pretty screwed up. Yeah, less pizza. Yeah. Being up, like, the conversations are definitely happening, and they're starting to happen more and more, which is great. But yeah, like, don't hold back in being able to. Don't hold back from talking about this stuff. Like, cry in front of your mates. I've done that plenty of times. Shit gets hard. Yeah, and you aren't alone. That's for sure. What can the community do?
I think you've actually said the perfect segue in many ways, because food was mentioned, and we're going into morning tea now. And
what's the food like?
we have food, and I want to give a really big shout out to the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre, who's catered today. They have done fantastic food, vegan, gluten-free, as well as those of you that like to have general gluten and meat products. I believe they're out there as well, but we've tried to cater for everybody. Can I once again thank you, Chris? It's really, really special to have someone who's prepared to come up and speak as candidly as you did.